thank you Arpita for introducing me, and thank you for this opportunity to give a talk on a topic of my choice. And the topic I've chosen is to do a deep dive into wearable technology for healthcare professionals. Now, let me start by saying that this is a very vast topic, and it's a huge topic. So, what I'm going to do is it's impossible for me to cover everything. So, I'm going to stick to certain aspects of it, and then we are planning to do a more comprehensive uh, course on wearable technology for healthcare professionals, and I'll give you the prelude to that as well. So if you're interested in that, again, please be in touch, and we will be able to kind of tell you more about it. Okay, so the topic is to do a deep dive into wearable technology for healthcare professionals. So what is wearable technology? What do we mean by wearables? So wearables they are often referred to electronic devices that are worn or integrated into either you wear it on your body or on part of your clothing or accessory. And this generally tends to have some sort of hands-free operation with capability to collect, analyze, and transmit data, mainly via internet connectivity, right? So a smart watch, a smart ring, even a AirPod, all of these can be considered as a wearable device. So to give you some examples of wearable devices, you have smart watches. So you have Apple Watch, you have the Samsung Galaxy Watch, Fitbit, and so on. You have just specific fitness trackers like Fitbit and Garmin. You have smart glasses like the Google Glass. Now you have the Meta glasses. And then you have medical wearable devices like the CGM or even ECG devices or blood pressure devices also. Right? Now, so like I said, this is a very vast topic. So it's impossible for me to focus on all the variables available. We'll be doing it as part of a course in future. But right now we'll be focusing on mainly wearable technology for health. We are not going to discuss wearable technology in general. We are mainly discussing with regards to health. Since there are many wearable technology, we'll be only focusing right now on smartwatch. And again, no sponsorships, right? But just to tell you, we'll be mainly focusing on Apple Watch as a prototype because that is the most popular smartwatch at present. Again, the same whatever I'm going to discuss with Apple Watch can be also applicable to other smartwatches also. And like I said, it's going to be a prelude to a course that we're designing on wearable technology for healthcare professionals. So more detailed course on this. It will be a 6-hour, 7-hour course on wearable technology. I think it's going to be very useful. So if you're interested in this, you can follow me on some of the social media channels like X, and I'll be posting, or we have a WhatsApp channel called Endocrinology India, and then we'll be posting relevant the details over there. Okay, so what is on today's agenda? Now we'll start with Apple Watch and its matrix. What are the various matrix which Apple Watch, especially the latest Watch OS version, can measure? We'll discuss about the various Apple Watch sensors. So what makes an Apple Watch or any of these smart watches? How do they really work? We'll discuss that. We'll go into a deep dive into step counts. I think that's the most popular use case for Apple Watches and for all these smart devices. We'll also discuss a lot about sitting is the new smoking, and how Apple Watches and all these devices help you in increasing your, reducing your sedentary behavior and increasing your activity. We'll discuss about something very important which is called cardiovascular fitness, which is part of Apple Watch. So if you have seen an Apple Watch, it'll tell you about your cardiovascular fitness, whether you're considered fit or not. And then we'll talk a little bit about the course that we're developing in terms of wearable technology. So let's start with what are the various. So here I'm going to give you a comprehensive list of all the matrix with which Apple Watch collects. So if you see, there are core health matrix which Apple Watch detects. There is an Apple Health app also which comes on your iPhone along with your Apple Watch. So you have health rate monitoring, heart rate monitoring, you have the respiratory rate monitoring. It measures the wrist temperature. It measures the blood oxygen saturation, which is the SpO2. It measures the sleep duration. It measures the step counts, which we are going to discuss in more detail. It will also measure the distance which you have traveled and flights climbed. Then it also looks at some advanced health metrics like the ECG. It can give you ECG tracing. It can give you a aerobic capacity, which is VO2 max. We'll discuss this as well. If you're a female, it will discuss it. You can track menstrual cycles. You can track pregnancy tracking, which is a new thing on Watch OS 11. You can track what is known as a training load, which elite athletes use, again in Watch OS 11. And atrial fibrillation detection is again standard part of these devices. You can also track how many calories that you burn, that is the move activity, exercise minutes, standing hours, how many hours are you standing, and this is important as far as the sedentary behavior is concerned, which I'll talk about. You can also track the workout specific metrics. For example, how many minutes you ran, how many minutes you walked. If you're cycling, how many minutes are you cycling? And then it'll tell you the cardiac fitness level also, cardiorespiratory fitness, which we'll discuss. There are some other interesting things, like for example, hand washing detection, especially very important after the COVID time. It can do fall detection, and it can also send an emergency SOS. So these are all comprehensive features which Apple Watch has in its device. Apart from that, if you had also seen, it also tracks the noise level, right, which is also something interesting. So if you are in a loud environment, it can also tell you about noise levels as well. Now, what makes Apple Watch, what gives Apple Watch the power to detect all these things? So it comes from various sensors which Apple Watch has, and the same sensors are there in a lot of other watches as well. You have an accelerometer, which basically measures the movement and orientation. So this is what helps you track steps, detect falls. It can help you monitor physical activity and so on. Then you have what is known as a gyroscope, which works as along with the accelerometer to detect the rotation. Okay, so accelerometer detects the movement, right, in a linear direction, whereas gyroscope detects the rotation. Okay, so it detects the rotation and orientation. A barometer detects the atmospheric pressure and it can help to measure the how many steps you are climbing, right, or what depth you are going if you are swimming. And it can also measure high G accelerometer, which measures the G forces. This is important for let's say you're in a very high speed device like a Formula 1 car, right? So you can detect the G accelerometer, or you're in a fighter plane, it can detect all this, the high G accelerometer, right? Then you have the health monitors, like it has a heart rate sensor, which uses photoplethysmography to measure the heart rate. So it basically shines green and infrared LEDs into the skin and detects the reflected light. It has a electric heart sensor, which captures the ECG by measuring the electric signals from the heart. And it has a blood oxygen sensor, which uses the red and infrared LEDs to measure the SpO2, right? This is same like the other SpO2 meters that you have, and it's as accurate as the other SpO2 meters. You also have environmental sensors like the ambient light sensor, so it can detect the surrounding light, and it can also tell you, and this is one of the interesting metric which I just discovered. It also tells you about what amount of time do you spend in sunlight. So it can tell you the sunlight time as well. It also has an always on altimeter, which measures the elevation in real time, right? So if you are again flying on a helicopter or somewhere else, it can tell you the altimeter as well. So these are all sensors that you have on Apple Watches. Now let's first dive into something which is the most popular use case for an Apple Watch or for any of these healthcare device, and that's the step count. So we'll discuss in detail about the step counts. What are the clinical importance of a step count? Now, how do step counts really work? So when you talk about step counts in smartwatches, they basically use accelerometers, right? So which is, like I told you, it tells you the movement in the linear direction, so X, Y, and Z axis. So how much you're walking in terms of linear movement, walking, running, right? It can also detect peaks and valleys corresponding to your steps. Then also it uses gyroscope along with the accelerometer, so it measures the orientation along with the the distance which is covered. And then using all this data, it has precise algorithms which sensor all this data, and it can estimate, depending on your movement type, it can estimate the step count, and it can actually analyze the frequency and pattern of the movement detected. And remember, there will be a lot of false positives and false negatives. So if you are moving on a bike, it should not detect your bike movement as a step count, right? So that is all. These are all done by sophisticated algorithms, which are mainly software pieces which are given at the back end, which detect. And again, if you're using the new Apple Watch, if you would have noticed, even if you are not started directly measuring your movement, if you're exercising or if you're walking, or if you've gone out for a walk, it will detect that you have gone out for a walk, and it will give you that should I measure your walk, right, because you're going out for a walk. Again, if you start from walking to running, it can then also detect that you are now started running, and that also can be precisely detected and captured. If you are moving on a cycle, and recently I went to Denmark, and they do a lot of cycling there, so I of course went with that as well, and found that even cycling automatically it detects, so it can detect whether once you start cycling. Then there are of course additional sensors like the barometer and the GPS sensor, which can also complement the data which is there. And if you talk about overall accuracy, right, the smartwatches are basically, it can, the algorithms can be, it kind of modifies depending on your walking style over a period of time. So it does take some amount of personalization. And then if you, of course, it has to be placed in a proper manner. So it has to be worn on, in a proper, with a snug fit and a non-dominant hand to improve its accuracy. So if you wear it the right way, it will give you the right data. So overall, it's a complex process, right? And again, some watches do it better, some watches less better. And again, as the time, so I have owned a lot of fitness watches. I used to have a Fitbit. I had a Google watch as well, and also had a Samsung watch. And now I have an Apple Watch. So I've seen over a period of time how these watches have evolved and how they become more and more accurate in terms of the step detection. So a lot of this is what a lot of your patients often ask you, that what is an ideal step count? Okay, so how much should I walk on my Apple Watch, or how much should my watch tell me that is an ideal count? Now, what the reality is, and this is the bare bones reality, that the ideal step count is still not known, right? So there is still a lot of research on this. I'm going to discuss the research about it, and then I'll leave it to you to make the decision. But this is what the recent research tells, right? So first and foremost, this 10,000 step thing is actually a myth. In reality, there's exactly no specific data from where it comes from. So this basically often, this goal of 10,000 steps has been basically debunked as a scientific benchmark. This is not a true benchmark. It basically came from a 1964 marketing campaign for a pedometer at that time. And it was not based on any medical research, right? So this 10,000 step thing actually does not have scientific basis. So now you have some recent health data which has shown that even smaller amount of step counts tend to have some benefit, right? So again, you can start having benefit when you even have 2,500 to 2,700 steps a day. So you don't really need to have, to get health benefit, you don't really need to have 10,000 steps. Even 2,500 or 2,700 steps can also give you reasonable amount of, benefits. Then of course, if you go further, you have 4,000 steps associated with reduction in risk of premature death. And then again, you have the optimal health benefits seen at about 7,000 to 9,000 steps a day. So I think your target hence should be close to 9,000 steps a day to get the maximum health benefit, right? Now again, going into more detail, there's a study which has shown that with 9,000 steps, and basically 8,763 to be precise, that provides the greatest reduction in risk of all-cause mortality, reducing the risk of early death by 60%. Okay, which is a great number to have. Again, if you talk about CV benefits, 7,000 steps, that is 7,126 to be precise per day, is associated with 51% reduction risk of cardiovascular disease. And again, if you talk about age-specific findings, for adults age 60 and older, the benefits kind of plateau at about 6,000 to 8,000 steps. And for adults less than 60, the benefits continue to happen at about 8,000 to 10,000 steps. So if you're younger, try to walk more and you'll get more benefits, right? So that's basically what the data says, right? And the benefits, like I said, are progressive. So again, there's a dose-response relationship with the steps and benefits. So for every 1,000 additional steps beyond 4,000, you have further reduction of early death by 15% up to 20,000 steps, right? So especially younger people. So for every 1,000 steps beyond 4,000, you keep reducing the risk of your death. And even small increases in steps, right? About 10,000 steps, about 1,000 steps, about 10 minutes of walking extra can yield substantial health benefits. So overall, you need to look, and of course you need to also see some other metrics also, not just the step count. So intensity of the steps, the pace also matters. And then again, breaking sedentary habits. So periods of, sitting for a long time, which we are going to discuss. If you break that cycle also, that is also equally useful. And then again, of course, all these things can have individual variation. So optimal step count can depend upon your health status, your individual, age of your age and other things as well. So there is no standardized way, but this is a broad thing. But again, you have now, of course, after this presentation, you have power to say that, you have more information on this topic. So basically, to conclude on the step counts, there is no one size fits all, right? Overall, 2,500 steps is something which your health benefits often start. So 2,500 is better than nothing for sure, right? And again, for most adults, try to aim about 7,000 to 9,000 steps a day. That gives you the maximum health benefits. But having said that, more you do, the better it is, especially for those less than 60 years of age. Okay. So again, there is a lot of evidence. This evidence comes from, this is a meta-analysis which looked at 17 studies, and they found that walking at least 3, 8, 6, 7 steps per day was associated with reduction of all-cause mortality. So if you see the data is hovering around 4,000 steps as we saw, and a minimum of 2,337 steps per day reduces the risk of cardiovascular disease. And a similar thing you had from the UK Biobank also, which again told about the incremental benefits with 1,000 or 2,000 steps every time, right? And then again there is, like I said, dose response relationship. So the more you walk, the better response, better data you get from overall. Okay, so this is all about step counts. Then let's move to another area, and you see this very beautiful picture which AI generated for me is sitting is the new smoking. Okay, so in the earlier era, smoking used to be considered cool. Smoking used to be, but smoking was associated with significant health benefit, health risks, and it's smoking kind of now is waning off, right? Not many people smoke, but sedentary behavior has taken over the new problem, and that's why sitting is now considered the new smoking, right? So why is sitting the new smoking? Now, basically, sedentary behavior, if you see any study, sedentary behavior has been, so sitting for a prolonged period of time has been associated with prolonged, complications and cardiovascular, problems, right? So Apple Watch or any of these watch helps to combat sedentary behavior, right? So basically, the phrase sitting is a new smoking basically says that, you have, just like smoking, the sedentary behavior is also associated with increased cardiovascular risk factors, right? Now, how does the Apple Watch or any of this watch help you stay more active and more, mobile? So, if you have seen Apple Watch, it has activity rings, and there are 3 rings which they have. They have the move ring, exercise ring, and the stand ring. So, the move ring tracks the overall calorie burn throughout the day and encourages regular movement. Okay, so if you see these rings, there are you can of course set your own personal targets. Exercise rings again tells the ring closes whenever you finish the target, right? So if I finish the exercise ring, so let's say I set a daily goal of 30 minutes, and if I close the exercise ring, it gives you the it closes that. And then you have the very important one, which I think is most important for the sedentary behavior. It's the standing ring. So it reminds you to stand and move for at least 12 hours daily, sending nudges if you have been sitting for too long, right? So I think this is something very important. Of course, you can set your personal levels. You can say I'll stand for 8 hours a day or 5 hours a day. But again, it sends you reminders. So overall, it sends you reminders for standing every few minutes. So you can send you prompts and reminders for if you're sitting for too long time, right? And then again, right from Apple Watch OS 6 onwards, the activity app tracks your sitting, your standing things. And then you can of course have social features. So these activity rings you can share with your friends and family, and then compare that with your thing. And now there are there's integration with standing desks also, right? So you can, for desk workers, you can integrate the Apple data with the standing desk to show you that how many minutes you're standing while working, right? So these are things. So I think standing desk is something which is very important, right? And if you see right now, I'm actually presenting while standing. Okay, so if you see this is my own personal standing desk. If you see this picture, right? So what I've done is I actually made a little standing desk for myself, right? Show this, right? So this is my standing desk, and you can see so this is a small little platform which you can put it up and down. So again, generally when I'm making presentations or doing online presentations, I do it while standing, right? And you can see that I put a little stepper also on the ground, right? So I'm actually using this desk currently, right, while I'm giving this talk. And you have this little stepper, so every few minutes again while in between consultations or in between presentations or in between meetings, I often use this for doing a little bit of steps while even sometimes during sometimes you have these prolonged meetings virtually, and then at that point of time this becomes very useful, right? So you keep moving and keep having activity. Okay, so what are the risks of prolonged sitting, right? Why is sitting the new smoking? So sedentary behavior has been shown to have significant cardiovascular risk. Mortality risk, so sitting for more than 8 hours a day is associated with 34% increase in mortality, and studies have shown that prolonged sitting leads to increased risk of death from any cause, right? Again, there is risk of cardiovascular disease also. So prolonged sitting increases the risk of CV disease even amongst those who exercise regularly, and sedentary behavior often disrupts the normal blood vessel function and contributes to increased risk of cardiovascular disease and diabetes and heart attack. Then again, specifically, extended sitting is associated with higher risk of type 2 diabetes. We'll discuss this in a few minutes. And then again, it has again other metabolic issues as well. And if you see, it's also associated with increased cancer risk also. So studies have shown that prolonged sitting is associated with increased risk of cancer. And then you can have musculoskeletal issues. So again, prolonged sitting can lead to more joint pain and poor posture and chronic pain. It can lead to weight gain and obesity. It can, of course, you compare it to smoking. While smoking, of course, is definitely more harmful. Smoking increases the risk by 180%, but prolonged sitting also increases the risk by 22%. So if you are smoking and sitting, well, God help you, right? And again, smokers face a much, so I think it's a wrong comparison because smoking is far more harmful. But having said that, the point is that sitting is also equally harmful, right? So the sitting is the new smoking aims to basically create an awareness about this health threat, right? So prolonged sitting and prolonged sedentary behavior is something that needs to be challenged, right? And this is a very important quote from one of the study which I said that, this is simply what you have to understand. The individuals who predominantly sit at work should engage in additional 15 to 30 minutes of extra physical activity per day to mitigate this increased risk they see because of the prolonged sitting. So if you are in a job which requires prolonged sitting and you can't do anything about it, then maybe you need to exercise 15 to 30 minutes more to negate the risk that you are facing. Okay, now what can you do as far as taking breaks from sitting, right? So every 30 minutes take a break from sitting, right? Every 60 minutes get up and move for about 5 to 10 minutes every time, and then every 120 minutes move about every 30 minutes for about 3 to 4 minutes, right? So that's something you should do. And then again, this type of behavior is associated with reduced cardiovascular and metabolic issues. And again, you can use your Apple Watch, right? So again, you can set reminders. Of course, Apple Watch itself has reminder which tells you that you need to stand and move, right? But you can set your own little reminders to help you take frequent breaks. So this is what I do in my outpatient OPD, right? In my hospital, when I'm sitting in the OPD, often you have, so at home when I'm doing online consultations or meetings, I just stand, right? Like what I'm doing now. But when I'm at work, when I'm at the hospital, right, in an OPD, I can't be really standing all the time. So what I've done is I put a reminder for 40 minutes. Every 40 minutes, I get a reminder on my watch which says that I need to go up and move. And then once the current patient is done, I often take a short stroll around the outpatient and then come back and sit, right? So this is something which is helpful. Now, specifically, if you talk about type 2 diabetes, prolonged sitting is associated with increased risk of type 2 diabetes specifically. And this, there's 13% increased risk of diabetes and 17% higher risk of developing new onset of diabetes and even worsening, especially if you are sitting for more than 8 hours. And again, there is a dose response relationship also. So sitting for 5 to 7 hours increases the risk of diabetes by to 26%, more than 8 hours by 30%, compared to less than 4 hours. And then again, it is independent of physical activity. So even if if you're doing sedentary behavior, but again account for physical activity, still the effect remains, right? So we don't know the exact mechanism, but prolonged sitting can lead to prolonged cooling of blood, disrupts the normal blood vessel function. Again, it leads to the more dysregulation of glycemia, and again it can lead to weight gain and other things also, right? So overall, in overweight or obese patients, interrupting sitting time with 2-minute breaks every 20 to 30 minutes can reduce the risk of the glucose and insulin response. It can reduce the glucose significantly and can also help in overall wellness. So I think what we need to understand is that you need to, if you're especially reducing, if you're having something like a pre-diabetes or obesity or at risk of diabetes, perhaps prolonged sitting is something you should definitely be avoiding. Okay. Now let's look at a more broader perspective which Apple Watch or all these watches give you, is the cardiorespiratory fitness, right? And now you have cardiorespiratory fitness itself in the Apple Watch, which is I think a great clinical tool. So how does it measure the cardiorespiratory fitness? So it gives you the VO2 max. So basically, Apple Watch, uses its, all this optical heart sensor and the SpO2 sensor and GPS and etc. to basically estimate the VO2 max, right? And then what are the factors which influence the accuracy? So again, age, sex, height, sometimes medications can also impact the thing. And then, generally it measures about VO2 max between 14 to 65, range. And it's validated for people more than 20 years of age, which less than 1 met in terms of error margin. And basically it measures it throughout the day, right? So when you're working out, it passively collects the data and this gives you the data of your individual cardiorespiratory fitness. So basically, what is VO2 max? Right, so VO2 max is basically the maximum rate of oxygen consumption during an intense exercise. It reflects your overall cardiovascular fitness and your endurance, right? So that is what it basically says. Of course, it's dependent on many things. It depends on your age, genetics, your fitness, your body composition, etc. It also tells you, the higher VO2 max means that there is more efficient uptake of oxygen by your lungs, efficient circulation and efficient utilization of oxygen by the muscles, right? So that all that, in a sense, it's a cyclic thing, right? And again, there has been significant studies which have shown that VO2 max is linked with, so higher value means that you have better overall, not only better quality of life, but less cardiovascular risk as well, right? Now, like I said, VO2 max is something, I personally, I saw my own data, and in my own case, the VO2 max value is around 28.5, which is not that great, right? So I think it's something, but it's not a fixed value. You can actually improve your VO2 max by improving your fitness, right? So I think that's something, and elite athletes often have values more than close to 60. So I think that's something which is what we should be really trying to achieve if possible, right? Again, so this was just a prelude to what we are going to do in future. So if you are interested in this topic more, we are going to come up with a more detailed course on this topic, right? We are going to discuss about, where we'll discuss the basics again, all these things, various variables. We'll specifically also look at the other variables also, the CGMs and etc. We'll do a deep review of that as well. We'll understand the technology behind it, and more about Apple watches and other Fitbit and other watches as well. We'll also look at step counts. We'll also discuss, I think this is a very important area, sleep tracking, right? So that's something we'll discuss in more detail, and all the clinical parameters, and we'll look at more advanced things like the cardiovascular fitness, heart rate variability. Again, it's becoming a very important parameter in overall health and wellness. We'll also look at sleep apnea screening. Now, the new Apple Watch can, especially the newer version, can actually detect sleep apnea also. So again, whether it is validated, how close it is to your gold standard also, we'll discuss that as well. And of course, we'll discuss specific use cases. For example, in endocrinology, the fall detection, CGM on watch. That's something in future which is going to come. We'll also discuss about arrhythmia detection, AFib detection, and for pulmonologists, maybe the sleep apnea and other things also, right? And we'll discuss about smart rings, some future variables, and glucose monitoring, especially non-invasive glucose monitoring in this course. So if you're interested in this, please follow me on one of the social media channels, and I'll be especially LinkedIn or Twitter or X, or we have the Endocrinology India YouTube channel, as well as Endocrinology India WhatsApp channel as well. So you can follow me there, and you'll be getting more details of that, right? So just to summarize what we discussed today, researchers debunked the traditional myth of 10,000 steps a day, right? So optimal benefit can occur at 7 to 9,000 steps, and adding just 1,000 steps reduces your mortality by 15%. So that's something you should be looking at, and you can look at progressive improvement rather than just having arbitrary targets. Prolonged sitting is a very important health parameter, and it's associated with increased cardiovascular risk. So you need to break up every 30 to 60 minutes. You should take movement breaks every few minutes, and regular breaks reduces the risk of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic syndrome, right? And then of course, modern smartwatches, they have all these healthcare benefits. So Apple watches can detect your basic vitals, ECGs, blood oxygen, sleep patterns, fall detection, etc. These are all very important for clinicians also in terms of monitoring your patients, right? And again, proper smartwatch wear is very crucial, right? So you should wear it on a non-dominant hand, properly snug fit, consistent wearing. If you use it on regular basis, it gives you more data. So I think as of now, even Apple and all these devices say that you should wear it almost as much as possible, right? Almost all throughout the day, even at night time, because in night time also it takes some critical data, and it is which gives you some very useful data, especially sleep data, which you get from the Apple watches, right? So again, regular movement is very important, right? And you can use smartwatch to give you stand reminders, activity rings, movement alerts. You can track and respond to prompts, right? And overall, build a consistent habit, right? But finally, just some recommendations, practical recommendations. So combine, probably use a standing desk wherever feasible. So standing is something you should try and do more in your life. Monitor and track your movement patterns using these devices. Maybe 15 to 30 minutes extra physical activity if your job is sedentary is useful. And then of course, use technology overall to create a healthier work habit, and regularly track your breaks and other things. And these are all benefited with wearable devices, right? So I thank you for